coffee is not kicking in, eh?
Okay, this is going to be a really fun panel, really fun people, and we're talking about fun topics like customer interaction with AI and personalization, which I think happens to be a really good use case. As we get started, maybe we'll start with you, Giorgio, just a little bit about how you're thinking around personalization at Mindshare, if everybody can also introduce what company they're at. We heard brief introductions, but to ground us as we get started, so yeah.
Thank you, Gabby. Nice to meet you all. I'm part of Mindshare, WPP media agency, one of the three biggest in the world. Customer personalization for us takes few angles. One is personalization in terms of messaging people get on the media, on the advertising, how we take them to execute an action, no matter the funnel, depending on the client, the vertical we're serving. And on the other side is working with the clients, with the brands, building example, a personalized, the buzzwords of the moment, a chatbot, or something that can create an experience, how to mitigate, in some cases, and we might gonna get later, frustration and get the human component in. So this is how we touch the different components of the customer experience.
Go ahead, Arvind.
Oh, thank you. Still good morning? Yes, good morning. And glad to be here talking about customer experience. Customer is at the fore of everything that we do, front and center for us at Verizon. So we look at customer from different angles or lens as well, similar to how Giorgio was talking about it. We look at every customer interaction as an opportunity to delight them. And how do we go about doing that, whether it's an interaction for them to buy something from us, whether it's an interaction to serve on a change or an issue that they may be facing, or if it's an interaction across stores or digital channel, etc. So we have a vast presence across the country where we are looking at it from a lot of different standpoint. And then we have a lot of different interactions from a B2B standpoint as well. The B2B side of our business, those interactions are slightly different, but they're equally important. So we look at providing them the right capabilities from each of their interactions, thinking about it. And then leveraging AI, we are also starting to look at how do we predict the intent of why somebody is reaching out and what do they want to do and how do we serve them at the place where they like, how they like it, and provide them with the best capabilities. At the end of the day, delighting the interaction, delighting the customer in the interaction.
How about your customers and how are they seeing personalization?
It's a very interesting. It's a very interesting question, Gab. The way that my customers are looking at personalization and customer interactions is typically in three phases. To start off with is to really identify the needs of a customer at the point of an interaction. So when I say at the point of an interaction, why is the customer really trying to come today to do what? And that can happen across different touch points. At a sales point, what does he want to buy? The service point, what does he want to really, where is he facing the trouble? So identifying that is the first part. The second part is aligning our service offerings to the customer and making sure that we have the right offer in place or the right service in place for that customer at that time is the second part of that equation. And the third part is really about monetizing that interaction. So what we are seeing is a significant shift from 1, 2, and 3, where 1 and 2 are increasingly taken over by AI and the data science element of it. And 3 is where increasing focus is on the human element of it, which is how do we basically have humans not focus so much on identifying the issue that the customer is coming with, not identifying what products that they have to be serviced with, or really focused on how do I have conversations which are driven towards customer satisfaction or monetization.
Okay, Randy, fidelity, it's a different game. Go ahead.
It is a different game, and it's by the very nature of our financial services industry, it's very conservative. So like everyone else, we want right message, right person, right time. But when we talk about the technology we use to implement it, we're very conservative. So we're not running out the door to say this is the craziest new AI tool that we could use to provide that. we're going to take our time to get there. And you'll find that, I think, with some of the other folks talking about financial services and banking earlier today. So for us, it's about making sure that all the regulation, all the control, all the governance and compliance that is at the very heart of our business is followed properly while we engage in these new technologies. So it's an interesting, slower path into it.
Okay, so I'm going to just guide us through some of the topics we're going to talk about for the next 20 minutes. Everybody's brought up different interesting points. We want to talk for a minute next, before I'm going to summarize first, about chatbots, because I think it's a really interesting use case when it comes to AI customer interaction, and it's really been around a lot longer than AI, and I think that's going to come up a lot today as well, the new AI buzz, previously machine learning. Customers expect personalization today, but how does ethics come into that? Some of the privacy, some of the governance that you're mentioning. What you mentioned that was really interesting is monetization. It was actually the third point. All of this, right, is to drive money for these organizations. So how can we do that in all of, like, there's a lot of exciting technology out there, but your CDOs or you as CDOs, the budget's going to come when they see benefits and rewards. And there's also something around empathy and whether AI can generate it. The last point, if we have time to get to, is the technical side of things and what are the biggest challenges you all see in building these solutions. So to start with chatbots and their evolution, how are you seeing the change and how is that impacting maybe the revenue side at your organizations today? If that's not the most impactful feature that you're building, you can talk about another one too, but I think chatbots is a big one.
Yeah, for me, again, as I said before, our main business is media. So chatbots as a consequence, and we help our advertisers, our brands we work for, we build their own. The issue is, you see, especially in healthcare, the empathy component on the equation or understanding frustration. The systems are set, and again, AI is interpreting information already existing and forecasting something on top of it, but doesn't read humans, doesn't understand humans as much as we can believe we are there, we know there. So what I'm seeing example in healthcare, understanding frustration on a person, we are partially there, but not totally there. When is the moment to add the human component to the equation? That's a thing I still see as a limitation. While on the other cases, you have on retail, on other type of business verticals, on straight, fast-moving fashion retails, you can have a nice way to suggest a product, put it on a pipeline, and have the sales close faster. Other sector like that one, even finance for the matter, asking for a loan, understanding what can be used for is in terms of information of the background of the person, protecting all the sensitive information, make sure the suggestion is unbiased. As much as we did a lot of progress in the last few years, still a lot of questions, open questions on this topic are, for me, still there in front of us.
Oh, that's a great point, Giorgio. At Verizon, we're looking at every interaction, as I mentioned earlier, and one of the things that we think about is before I talk about the chatbot, how we've been doing something historically. We've had agents, service agents that people can interact with. Typically, you see that somebody calls, and I'm sure everyone has been to a doctor in the last year or so, at least for your physicals,
Hopefully.
if not nothing else, right? So if you go to the doctor and these interactions, these are very interesting for me. And the reason I bring this example up is you're talking to the doctor when they ask a question, and they are busy showing their back to you, typing things away, right? I'm sure we've all kind of gone through this. This is something that I hate about this. There is no aspect of empathy. There is no connection, even though that's your primary care provider. That doesn't exist. So the reason why I say this is because interactions with Verizon service agents, we wanted it to be different. So what we started to do about that is when somebody's on the phone, you may not be looking at them face to face, but we wanted to provide the frontline agent contextual information depending on what the question is coming or what questions the customer would potentially ask. So we provide those information on the screen and make it context sensitive. So they're not busy searching things away or searching knowledge bases on figuring out how do I answer questions. So this is kind of where we started our journey on AI about 10 years back. Back then it was called ML. There are a lot of different flavors of it, within the umbrella of AI, if you will. So that's where we started, and about, I want to say about 6 or 7 years back, we got into the mode of how can we enable chat conversations. As we have more and more customers who are coming from the millennial segment and Gen Zs and so on, they probably don't prefer to pick up the phone and call somebody. They are more comfortable with the chat mechanism. So we started looking at how the demographics of our customer base is changing and how do we bring that aspect in. So without a whole lot of wait time, very quickly you assign a bot to start answering some questions. And this was driven out of rules and template-based engagement. So you could do a certain amount of things, but you needed to know what are the key call drivers typically, and then you start putting rules and templates around it. Next point of interaction, as we start looking at it from going from service, we started switching more towards the sales part of it. So lots of fun use cases, amazing interaction points, how we are kind of starting to drive. In the sales side of it, I'll just kind of wrap this example, is that you typically walk into a store, you want to buy something, you want to buy a phone. The agent that is selling you the phone is obviously going to try and upsell you, is going to give you a bigger, better phone, is going to give you accessories to go along with it. That part of it was missing when you're doing that interaction with a bot. So we wanted to build that angle into it as well. So these are some of the ways that we kind of evolve that ecosystem as we think about how we are starting to leverage bots to improve the experience, at the same time keep the top line in mind for the company as well.
Cool. Yeah. Before we continue, there's a few things you brought up. One of them is you're referencing this human in the loop side of it, where there is a person involved and the chatbot is taking a piece of the work. The doctor example is a really interesting one, even though it's it's an interesting parallel. But I feel like it's lack of empathy in that situation, but also it's lack of automation. Like, it's not, maybe they are empathetic as an individual, but the task has to be done and it can't be done by a computer. Maybe it should. That's a really good use case for AI. So I like those examples. And then you're bringing back in some of the delight. How are you all thinking about the evolution?
Bots are really interesting in my mind. It's been around for more than 10 years now. And it's gone through its own cycle of evolution in different ways. When it started out, it was very rule-based, transactional, like customers coming and asking. And there's a cycle of frustration that the customer went through in terms of the bots were not able to understand what the customer is saying, and a whole bunch of activities that were happening. And with the evolution of LLMs, it's kind of taken a very interesting turn, which means that we've significantly leapfrogged in the evolution of bots and what it can bring to the table, both in terms of service support and sales experiences. But what's interesting with what Arvind said, and something that I want to elaborate a little more, is on how different type of customers are using bots in very interesting ways. Specifically, I want to throw light at the Gen Z segment or the Gen Alpha segment, because they seem to be really, really comfortable using chatbots. And if you look at one of the companies like Character.ai, I don't know how many people are using that in this group, maybe none of us, but they're having millions of chats happening, and 60% of their audience is like Gen Z, between the age of 18 and 25. They're chatting to bots, they're chatting to different personas. You want to chat to anime character, they're going and talking. One of the ways that we are using it is to some of our customers in very interesting use cases, even prior to the selling process. It's even to understand what Gen Z segment is really wanting to do. So for instance, right, we working with a fashion brand, they don't have an idea about what Gen Z is thinking, because they're now buying niche brands, they're going and shopping online, and they're not willing to tell you about what they are doing or what's going on in their mind. And here's where we are trying to build chatbots that can give us continuous stream of insights, where person's talking to the chatbot, and the chatbot's trying to get intelligence about what's going through the mind of the person who's taking decisions on a daily basis. It's why do you buy this brand? What's happening? So think about this as a focus group that can be supercharged and make it a very large continuous stream of insights that can be built. So these are interesting use cases that could have never happened before. Scaling up really small focus groups into large continuous stream of insights. And chatbots are used now in interesting ways.
Yeah, very proprietary data, actually.
That's true.
Go ahead.
So I'm very critical about chatbots. And just quick background on myself. I've had two careers. My first career, I was a newspaper journalist and an editor. Then I got into technology, and it's been mostly MarTech product management. So I edit everything that I see, menus at restaurants, signs on the wall, whatever it is, and I take every chance to be a critical product person when I'm engaging in things. And to me, when it comes to chatbots, even though we're trying to say that they're smarter, they're effectively just smart search at the end of the day. But too many of them are still kind of branched. So you get deep into a path and it doesn't really have the context awareness of what you're really trying to get to. So I'm, in general, not entirely pleased with most chatbots in the world. Some are better than others, obviously, but I think the ability to define good scope around the context of the problem helps the performance of the chatbot. And when you have something that's a lot broader, I think that's where you see failures and the poor product performance and the poor user experience.
Yeah, and one of my other questions is around like chatbots being the first interaction someone has with your organization, which maybe we can jump around here and you can talk a little bit about. You want that first interaction to be a moment of delight. If they're not in the Gen Z, and even personally, it's the quality of the chatbot a lot of the time. If you feel like it's giving you the answers that you want, I don't have a problem talking to a chatbot when I change an airline ticket or whatever it is. If it's wrong, I become extremely frustrated, and maybe it's the generation. I'm not Gen Z. I might look Gen Z, but I might not be speaking to it right. So, how are you addressing that as this now being the forefront of your organization, the first interaction someone has with the company? It's quite delicate, and it's on a lot of your shoulders.
Yeah, I think one of the things I mentioned earlier, the thing is very critical. Provide as much information as possible to the chatbots so they become very context aware and context sensitive. Somebody coming in with a trouble on, oh, my phone is not working, or what do? I can't send a text message, and you try to start trying to sell them something, those interactions are not going to go very well, right? So that's why it's very important to understand what is the intent of why somebody is reaching out. So that's one. So having that context is super important. The second part of it is, if there is a long pause or wait in response, that frustrates people. And especially, you see these interactions where somebody reaches out and is asking for something, and you tell them, oh, okay, can you give me 5 pieces of information about your account number, your validation, PIN, et cetera, You get that in, and then you ask a question, then you get a response, and, oh, I'm going to toss you over to another agent, right? And then you talk to the other agent, they ask for the same 5 things yet again. That is a super frustrating moment, right? So having that context being passed from one agent or one bot to another bot as you go through it, and keep it as abstracted and transparent to the customer throughout their, throughout the journey of that particular interaction is very important. The third part of it is provide more context from other interactions that might have happened prior to this current interaction. It's whether in the last 30 days they may have purchased a service or a device in our scenario, and maybe they're calling about that. There was a bill that was generated that was sent 2 weeks back, and maybe they're calling about that. Provide that prior context and history of those interactions makes it even more context sensitive, and I think, reduce the number of frustrating experiences, that was being referred to earlier.
Maybe we can go over to you, Randy, as the cynic, which I appreciate. And you're also referencing the consolidation of data. You have to have, obviously, the backbone behind it to make it feel personal.
Stitch it together.
And stitch it together, which anybody can talk to me about later. But go ahead, Randy.
Well, it's interesting because then that starts to introduce you to the creep factor, right? Like these hyper-personalized experience everywhere you go, where people looking over their shoulder like, are you looking at me? Right? Why are you showing me this on Instagram? I was just talking to my girlfriend about this the other day. You get too close to that, and now you're turning people away. So there's a tough balance there to find the right amount of information. Again, back to context. This whole thing is about context, right? The right amount of information, the right quality of information to really understand what the problem set is. Because to your point, if you show up with a broken phone and I'm trying to upsell you something else, you're never going to be delighted by that experience. So the smarts that you need to build in this are real, and this is why I'm pretty cynical about having both the elegance of the user experience, the quality of data, and the performance quality to really provide a delightful experience for these things.
Yeah, it's a fine line of walking it. What do you think, Giorgio?
There's one thing on what you said, and this is something that I hear the creep factor, being in media here every single day. How much How many of you have a Gmail account? How many of you have a social media login? How many data are you giving out for free? Don't surprise yourself if we're getting very precise. We can forecast everything because of the data that I'm the first one, give out for free. And Amazon login, we have also biometric now. So you're right, and all of us, all of our companies, yours especially, because obviously finances and healthcare are more protected, but we have law and legislation we need to abide on. But we have so many information that people are living for free for generations right now that unfortunately there is a risk of creep factor. That's why contextualization is key. But guys, we have all the information we want right now, even too much. The problem we're having right now is to filter out the right one and set up the right foundation for what we need. But you're right, it's a risk, but no surprise anymore. Like,
Yeah, no, that's interesting, and maybe you want to comment on this because there's this idea. Customers actually expect personalization, right? They want to be everything. They want us to know things about them, and we as customers give it away freely. So how can you gate some of that information as an organization? There's the context side, but also structuring bots or structuring your systems. I don't know how you're helping folks with that.
So one of the interesting parts about this whole exercise is that a lot of companies that we work with struggle on how to test these systems.
yeah,
Right? And there's a reason for it, right? Because in software development, there's a linear process. It's like you develop a software, you have a set of features, you go in and test whether these features are working, not working, right? But when it comes to any kind of AI and LLMs, how do you really test it? Because the fluidity that it allows you is also the same that kind of works on the opposite side of the spectrum for you in terms of how do you even test it, right? So as we're kind of evolving in this space, we're building more intelligent testers, if you will, other LLMs that can come in and maybe interact with your production systems to see if there are scope for creepiness, scope for bad conversations, frustrating conversations, right? And also the emergence of what we call as digital twins, right? Which is, you mirror the system with humans on the other side of the spectrum, watching your conversations and correcting them over time. And therefore you're kind of building an intelligent system which will kind of, become better and better over time. And that's the evolution path that we're on. I'm feeling very confident that, in a couple of years or so, we move into really, really exciting times where, the chatbots have increasingly lesser, frustrating moments.
Yeah, that's sort of the last question. It's around sentiment analysis and tone and whether AI can truly master empathy, which is a heavy question for this panel, but I think it's appropriate to sort of think about for a moment. And everyone's referencing what you're saying about how if people are involved, how much resourcing should we apply to the chatbots being better and better. But even just a pulse check, it sounds like you think chatbots or AI can sort of be that voice of empathy? Yeah.
it has to come from an integration of data sets, meaning right now, as I said before, we have all the information we want, we can. There is sets and regulation, there's also human intelligence. We know what to use and not, and create. Needs to be a human layer in the middle that understand what's not and help supporting what you were saying, the testing and how to improve the models. On the other one, in our case, we combine our science information in to understand and mitigate what behaviors a user or person is expressing to cut down some information, even if we can use it by law to make sure they feel safe, the messaging is. There is a human component. We need to humanize the equation. And that's where the people's gonna feel the empathic component. It goes hand in hand with the ethic part because you need to protect them too. But it's hard. It takes an extra layer that I don't think in the initial phase of AI nobody was thinking about it. Not in a structured way as we are thinking about it right now in the last year and a half.
Yeah, I look at it slightly differently. The short answer is yes, I believe we will get there, and we are already on the path of getting there. An example I would give is, I'm sure everyone has played around with ChatGPT or the likes of it, right? You put a prompt, gives you whatever you need based on the information that's available. But the beauty of it is now you can also engineer your prompt to say, change the tone, make it more professional, be more kind, be more empathetic. So yes, absolutely, we are getting there. We are already on a path.
I would differentiate between trained empathy and true empathy, right? And that's really the crux of what separates us from the bots.
Vignesh, no question there, but that, even humans are having problem with that.
Yeah, true, agree.
Absolutely, absolutely. Right. But like I said, that's what separates us from the bots, right? So eventually, I hope it doesn't get there.
That's fair, yeah.
Yeah, and similar thoughts, right? Now, I grew up in a generation where in 1980s, we had a couple movies where you had intelligent computer systems, right? 2001 Space Odyssey. HAL was sentient and empathetic. Everybody else on the spacecraft were very logical, but here was the one, the machine had the empathy. You go to war games, Whopper, right? Whopper eventually learned empathy. It learned that the only way to not lose is to not play the game. I think we're on the right path. I think we're getting there. I think it's going to take a long time. These were invented however many years ago. The movies, the creative process, that often drives our technology. I have confidence we're going to get there. We're not that close yet.
Yeah, even for media, sorry, I'm going to close that one. We have a way to show different creatives, understand how the people might going to look on some emotion or something, but then marketers come into the game and close the circle on the audience. That's a human component still that we need to get there and add to the equation. I agree with you. There's two different pieces on training, but there's a human part that needs to be added still.
Do you want to close out the panel for us, Giorgio? I think that was thank you all.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody. Thanks all of us here. Thanks to AIM. For me, guys, I'm cooperating with AIM since the pandemic. Remember, this organization allows us not just to be here as experts in AI ecospace altogether, share information all across businesses, but also in the pandemic, we were helping junior or younger generations to enter this world. So they go broader from supporting us, creating network opportunities, also to bring up the future generation. So thank you guys for all the work you're doing, for the awards and all the activities you do for us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. That was a wonderful panel discussion. Thank you so much, guys.